Hello, Lovelda. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being on the show today.
Hey, it's great to be here. Always a pleasure. I love a good interview.
I'm really excited about our conversation. So many things I'm curious about. First and foremost, you started your speaking career at 13. Is this correct? Or did you start speaking on
Well,
stage at
I
13?
started speaking on stages at the age of 13. And it, I guess the thing is, I was just one of those kids that always liked to stage. So if there was an opportunity to like give a talk, my hand went up. If it was public debate class, my hand, like I was that kid. And I think, I didn't know that hosting, emceeing, speaking. I mean, I knew of acting as a stage type thing because you see that quite often. But I did not know that you could get paid to host events where people got, you got doctor, lawyer, dentist, those kind of job roles are the ones that we know about. This one, I just didn't know it existed. And so to me, what I find quite fascinating is to look back and kind of go, it was always my thing. Lovelda, you're too loud, you're really talkative. I'm like, yes, I found the perfect career. It might have taken a while, but I figured it out. I get to like be energizing and be a little bit loud and be a little bit bossy, and people appreciate me for it.
It's amazing. It sounds like you really optimized your strength and actually found the perfect career and the perfect business path for you. So, how did the journey look like? So, you loved it as a kid and a teenager. It was always sort of your personality. How did this lead to you having a full-time business now?
Well, it started there, and then I went and did a degree in accounting and financial management, which is, a clear, direct route to being a host. That's what you do. And I kind of got into that degree, and a couple of months into it, I very quickly realized it wasn't for me. I could do it, but I just was like, this is not exciting for me. So when I left, I went on one of these development programs for a company. Ironically, the one job I did get when I was at university, I had a 4-year degree, 1 year of which you worked in industry, and I ended up working for Microsoft for that year. And then I applied for a second job for another year for when I went back to uni. And that job was literally to go around representing Microsoft and speak at events. That was actually my job. I remember at the time there was a guy who'd been working with the company for years based in the UK, and I beat him. I was a student. I was a freaking student who had a degree to go back to, and this guy was a full-time employee who was be making an upward direct, like he was already doing this kind of role in the UK, and I beat him to the job. So I probably should have known back then that it might have been a something. Didn't pay any attention to it then either. And I worked in project management, and then I worked in sales for years. And whilst I was doing it, I got a little bit of a bug to start my own business, albeit I had no idea what it was going to be. I just thought I want to run my own business. So I started lots and failed at lots of them, as you do, right? I had a business, like the ones that actually took off a little bit. I had one called Dine Events, where I used to create and coordinate these really cool dinners for entrepreneurs to connect and meet with each other. And I kind of loved the hosting side of that, but the selling tickets and all of that malark started to do my head in. And then I started something called the Collaboration Club, where I was working with creative entrepreneurs and again holding spaces and hosting events for them. And something about that wasn't quite sitting with me. And when I was doing these, I'd be on stages quite a bit, speaking to grow my business. And I had a friend of mine who'd started a speaking coaching business and periodically would invite me to host the events. And she always said, Lovelda, you're so good at this. And I just thought, it's not that difficult. Like, it's seriously, this is not rocket science. Like, I'm just here feeling into what feels right for the event. So it just didn't occur to me that it might be something like it. To me, it was just so easy. And then she invited me to co-host a award ceremony with her. And there were two parts to the ceremony. It was like a pre-event and then the actual award ceremony. And I remember doing the pre-event and coming off stage and somebody saying, so how much do you charge for this? And I was like, So because I was working at sales at the time, I said, listen, babe, I'm in the middle of work at the moment. How about I give you my number and then we can have a proper discussion about pricing, which just basically bought me time to figure out what the heck somebody charges for something like this, because I had no idea. And so I did a few of those, and then I would be really excited. I'm talking on the internet, like, you know, on LinkedIn and Facebook. Oh my gosh, I got this event coming up. And then people started reaching out to me, and I was like, again, not noticing any coincidences here, that there is nothing on my profile that speaks about emceeing or hosting. It's not a service that I'm saying I offer. I've just been kind of drip feeding a couple of bits and pieces out. And I'm looking at these people who are coming to me, like I'm on my LinkedIn. I'm like, okay, so who are we? So we're not connected to anybody. So how the heck? I'm like really wrecking my brain to go, how are these people finding me? And it wasn't until I got contacted by an event in Paris. And I thought, wait a minute, hold up. So I can get paid to travel, meet new people, and what am I doing here? So at that point, I thought, right, people are finding me anyway. I'm getting awesome feedback when I get found. What if just for a year, just for giggles, I just drop everything else, except my day job, I kept that, and I focus my business or my second income stream as a host and an MC. And that's just what I'm going to call myself. I'm just going to rebrand and just tell everybody it's what I do. And I'll do this for a year. I'm going to meet people who know what they're doing and learn from them. And let's see where I am in a year. Well, in 18 months, I'd done international events. I'd introduced and interviewed Monica Lewinsky. I'd introduced Nick Kershaw, who's like an 80s pop star. I'd introduced Kunnal Nayaar, who was the guy from The Big Bang Theory. He plays Raj. It was just mad. I'd introduced politicians. I had a video testimonial from Paul Polman. I was like, what the actual heck is going on here? And so I kind of fell into it in some regards. I followed those little breadcrumbs where I was able to well, not even that I necessarily saw it. I think the thing that made the difference is when I actually made a decision, because I could see a potentiality. I didn't have anything to base it upon. I knew nobody who did this as a living. Like, I didn't even know if it was possible to just run a business where, you know, this was a significant income stream. I didn't know what you could charge. And to go from that to where I am now, where, you know, the month of August, I must have had about 15 different inquiries. And I mean, one week, there was like 2 or 3 a day. And this is all self-taught. So that's pretty much, like, so it's the short version of what the journey was for me. So yeah, love it.
I can tell you love it. And it also, I can tell that it's totally in your zone of genius, both from what you were saying, the patterns, it coming over and over again, and then it being so easy for you, because this is why sometimes people don't recognize it's their zone of genius, because it comes so easily to them that they think, well, this isn't a special skill. It's not that hard. People that are great at problem solving also think that way. So that's also really interesting to hear, was really the easiness somehow that comes through and transpires when you're speaking. Is wonderful. And I'm also curious, because you said that when you began, you didn't know how to charge, you didn't know what pricing to put. How did you figure this out? And now what would be your sort of guidelines? If anyone is listening to this and they want to start a speaking career, what advice would you give them in terms of pricing their own fees? Yes.
Yeah, it's a good question. I started by having a quick look at the market. I'll tell you, I guess the best way of answering this is to give you my perspective on how I kind of teach people to charge, and then a few of the things just totally not to do that get people in absolute like trouble. So one of the things that I'm happy I didn't listen to when I started, I met a couple of hosts, right? I Googled them, found them on Twitter and stuff. And, you know, like a good student, I met with them, I bought them coffee and I picked their brains, and they told me, these were UK based ones, and both of them told me that this wasn't really something you could make any serious money from. In fact, one of them told me categorically that you couldn't make more than about $300. So it's about 300 British pounds, around about 450, 500 US dollars for an engagement, because that's the normal price. And something instinctively within me just called BS. I was like, yeah, maybe you can, but I'm pretty sure there's a way, right? And so whilst I took heed, I also like listened to my intuition, which was there, not, I think the biggest thing is take advice from people who are doing it, because I moved forward years later and I know hosts who charge 5 figures to host an engagement, right? But they were nowhere in my awareness. And if I took the advice of somebody who was charging $300, then I would be running a volume-based hosting business where I would just need to get so many of those in a year to make it work. And that would be my ceiling in terms of what to charge. So the first thing I would say is really surround yourself with people who are charging the sorts of fees that you want to be charging. And the more I've befriended people in the industry, and the more I can see, this is a friend of mine who's charging 5 figures for an hour's keynote, I'm able to open my horizons to say, okay, well, this is more work than doing a keynote. I'm not going to be for everybody, and it's not the budget available to everybody. But what I can say is there is that level of budget available. So that's the first thing that I would say, like really surround yourself with people who know. When it comes to pricing, there were 3 key parameters, and I don't know that I knew these. I think I knew them instinctively to start off with when it came to working out, well, what can I charge? The thing about the speaking industry is there isn't like a set rate card that you can say, oh, okay, an hour is this. No, you can have a leadership speaker who is speaking for an hour that's charging, either doing it for free or charging a couple of $100, and another leadership speaker who's charging 6 figures for the same hour, right? So it really is that big. Now, that of course, there's loads of stuff at the lower end of the market. The professional speaking space is kind of seen to be anything above, if we're talking US dollars, like when you get into the 4, 5, 6K mark, you're really in that kind of professional speaking arena. And then when you're in the 6 figures, you're normally in a celebrity type space, right? Your Barack Obamas, those sorts of like celebrity type figures, they'll be commanding, Tony Robbins, commanding those sorts of fees typically. But there's a lot of people in the middle who are easily making 4 or 5 figures for an engagement comfortably on a regular basis. And so it's kind of understanding what's possible and what do people pay for and who pays. So there's a market piece. There's a market piece because there are certain industries or certain sectors that typically just have more money. I can tell you, I will make more hosting a corporate conference than I will hosting a conference 9 times out of 10. And even if I'm hosting a conference, if I'm doing it for a large international conference organizer, they're going to have much more availability and cash flow than if I'm doing it for an entrepreneur. Typically, right? And they're going to see more bang for their buck in terms of that funding. So it's understanding the market to say, right, where is the money at and what are people actually paying for, so that you can position yourself accordingly, so that then you know the art of the possible. And then I say, just because it's possible to make that money doesn't mean you can make the money. Just because there's a possibility of somebody charging 5 or 10K for a speaking engagement doesn't mean that you right now can actually command that fee. There are 2 factors that will link into that. The first of which is, do you look like you're worth that amount? And anybody who's like, oh, I don't get it. I'm like, okay, go and look at a hotel website, any hotel website. And within a matter of seconds, you will have made a determination in your mind about how much that hotel room is going to be. And it will be based upon visuals. It will be based upon mainly visuals, like the proof as well. Like, it's a well-known hotel chain that's been around for years. It's a boutique hotel, and I can see they've put all this love into the different things. Or you look at it and you'll be like, that stuff is all from IKEA and they just sprung that up in their backyard last week. In your mind, you've already decided the price. And it's not any different with speakers. Just because you tell me you're 10K, if you tell me you're 10K and I'm seeing shoddy video footage and shoddy photographs, and come on, man, what 10K speaker can't afford to pay to get somebody to take some decent photos? So I now don't believe you. So it's about building a profile where what you say you charge and what you charge feel congruent, so that like mentally I'm on the same page. And then the third factor is, what number can you say with certainty?
Yeah, having the sort of self-confidence and self-assurance. So the way it looks, the congruency of it, and then being able to feel aligned with the pricing. That comes up a lot also in general in sales for people who have their own business and services, and how they feel about their pricing. That's huge, because people can pick it up.
Yes, just because you have a website that looks really whizzy bang and you say you charge 5K, if when you say it, it's really an apologetic question, like, you know what I mean? The ones where it's like, what's your fee? It's 5,000, but you know, you get a lot of value for that 5. Trust me, when your fee is 5,000, you don't justify anything. You just say it's 5K. Boom, done. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to put any apology. You don't have to put anything extra behind it. You just say, here's what the number is. That's what your investment is. And they'll say yes or they'll say no, and you'll be okay with it. Like when you really are okay with it. But often people are so punching so far, I don't want to say punching so far above your weight, but so out of congruency and out of alignment with the price that everything about their energy says something contrary to what's coming out of their mouth. And your energy will sell faster than your words.
Yes.
So there's work to be done. For most people, they can't go from charging a couple of $100 to charging 3K overnight. They just will really struggle to kind of, maybe they can do it over email, but if you have them in a call, like they can see you, look in their beady eyes, it's not going to happen. Everything about their body language is going to be like, you know, they'll be like this to start off with, like up straight, really great posture. And then you'll just see them kind of sinking apologetically into the chair. The closer you come to that conversation, there'll be some shifts in the energy, right? And you can hide that a little bit more behind email, but it is neon impossible to hide that in a live setting, a virtual setting, a phone call. They will pick it up. There'll be changes in your voice or your body language or something like that. And so the thing that I found about building my profile the way that I did is I collected evidence along the way at each price point. So I could, for myself, be like, hold up, I interviewed Monica Lewinsky. That's got to count for something. You know, hold up, I've got 25 testimonials. That's got to count for something. Somebody at Microsoft, like a senior executive at Microsoft, really liked me. That's got to count for something. My clients have been rebooking me for 4 years in a row. That's got to count for something, right? And I think when we don't collect those, when we're not consciously picking them up, what happens is the nonsense in our head kicks off, and we all have it, like, oh my God, who are you to charge that? What, you know, and you start thinking you have to do more. And this is what I did a while back, I did a challenge, and I had the VIP area in the challenge, and somebody who joined the VIP, where we after the primary part of the challenge, we'd have like Q&A sessions. And somebody who joined the VIP said to me, Lovelda, you're talking about like 3-figure speakers, 4-figure speaker, 5-figure speakers. Like, what's the difference in terms of what they deliver? And I had to pause for a moment. I thought, let me think about me. Let me just rewind and have a think about me and what has changed for me in terms of what I'm delivering. And the truth is, and this sounds bad, not a lot. And I don't mean not, of course, my talent has got better. I've been doing it for more years. I really do take my craft seriously, but I haven't added on more hours of work, or, you know, if anything, I've got more efficient at delivering the same thing. I haven't now got these more convoluted packages where they get 15 hours of calls with me leading up to the, like, I don't do any of that. I'm fundamentally offering the same thing. I'm going to come into your event, you get 1 or 2 calls with me prior, and then I have my prep. Like, that structure actually hasn't changed. So package wise, they're not doing anything different. Like, your 5-figure speaker is not delivering a bigger, more complex, convoluted talk. They just have much more confidence, congruency, depth, positioning, credibility than you do. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. I agree. I think it's all about how people feel about it as they go along. What you were saying about them having the confidence to give that pricing. And I love the example you gave with you taking all the testimonials, taking the experience you had, how much you charge, and you sort of build that ladder in your mind and that incremental progress. And that gives you then the confidence to charge more. And that's why people can't go from one day to the next and just triple their fees, because they haven't done it in their mind. So they don't feel congruent with it.
Yeah, I think there may be a handful of people who can do that, but for most people, maybe. It just doesn't work, actually. And what I did, though, is I increased my prices pretty sharpish. So I felt sorry for my annual clients, because they'd come back and the next year, it's like my prices had doubled, but they didn't double overnight. What happened is, like, let's say I was charging like 500 a day. And then after 2 or 3 people paid that, I got a bit of confidence. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm a $500. And then I just thought, let me just try my hand at asking for 750. And that would feel uncomfortable, but not ridiculous. It was like a little stretch, and worst case scenario, we'll come back to my 500, because they're only ever going to, I don't know anybody who's going to negotiate up on your number. They're only ever going to negotiate down. So at least I could say, if we went from 750 to 500, I wasn't going to be mad at that number. If we went from 750 to 600, I'm like, shoot, I just increased my fee by 600 because I asked for 750. And sometimes they just take it. And after I'd have a couple of people paying that number, I'd go, I'm not feeling this anymore. We're going to call it 950. It was whatever number just felt like it was going to be a bit more of a stretch. And that's what I did for a number of years. And the first time I would say the fee, it would always feel a little bit like, oh, let's see where we go to with this. But what I found is, once 1 or 2 people had paid it, that was it. It was bedded in. Like, I had no problem after that, just asking for the new number. And if you asked me, like, if you came back to me a year later and asked me for last year's prices, I'm like, no, boo, boo. We done moved on. Like, that was, yeah, no, you need to come to today's price. You're talking about yesterday's price. That's gone. This is me here now. And that's what's worked for me. And it's often what I recommend to people, like, figure out what the market is, know where you're shooting for, and then incrementally increase it at numbers that you feel like I can step into that. And for some people, those gaps are going to be bigger. For some people, they'll be able to go from like 500 to 1500 and step into that. They're probably not going to be able to go from 500 to $5,000. Like, that's just going to feel like, and the thing is, if you land it, you're going to spend your whole time proving yourself. That's what the problem is. When you're out of congruency at the sales point, when you land that gig, if you're fortunate enough to land it, it's like a double-edged sword, because you never fully believed you could do it in the first place. So now you've got imposter syndrome running through the top and bottom and the full length of what you're doing, because you now feel like you've got to prove yourself.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's not worth doing it that way anyway.
No, it's not. And how do you help business owners? So you work with female business owners who want to land more speaking gigs. So you obviously help them with the pricing, with the mindset, with everything you've explained about the congruency and gradually building up this credibility. How do you help them land more speaking gigs? Because in your case, you obviously shined and everyone came to you, which is great. But I imagine the business owners that come to you and want to work with you, they maybe struggle to land as many speaking gigs as you did. So how do you help them to figure that out?
The truth is, most of the business owners who come to me aren't struggling to land gigs. They're struggling to convert those gigs into revenue. right? So, and they're attracting engagements that are the wrong fit for who they really want to be, but they keep taking them on and they don't know how to shift it. So they think they need a completely different like strategy. Whereas when I first started, I wasn't attracting people who wanted to pay me decent bucks. I was just attracting people who wanted a host, and most of them had like, I was fighting for 500 pounds a day. It was not an easy job. I was having to convince, and, those were hard discussions back then, right? So, I completely understand that nobody wants to pay my fee. Here's my number and I'm really struggling with it. What really helped me was, I think people do it back to front. People believe incorrectly that if I'm just really good at delivering, I'll grow a business. And whilst that's the case for a small percentage of people, honestly, most of it's not the normality for most people. It's a business. What I did really well that helped me, and I'm watching it help my clients, is I didn't just think about being really great at the talent and the delivery, because to me that's a given. You have to have a quality product to sell, right? So you need a decent talk, you need depth of expertise in that. And my typical client already has that. They're running a business, they know their stuff, and people are constantly, because they know their stuff, pulling on their expertise. The challenge is they're not making any money from it. What I do is help them to position their profile, their visibility, their pricing, such that they turn that around and people now expect to pay them, such that they're having the conversations rather than pulling away from them, that generates money where it exists, but they were never asking. So I've had people say, oh, there's never been the opportunity for a money conversation. I'm like, hold up. I don't understand that. Like, I don't understand it, because if I got on a discovery call with a coaching client and we got to the end of it and that client, that prospect, didn't start talking about money, I'm not going to then just engage in a coaching arrangement with them. Like,
let me just do this for free anyway.
But effectively, that's what you're telling me you do with your speaking. You get on a call, they don't mention a fee, and you just go and do the damn work anyway. There's you got to take responsibility for the financial conversation. And those are awkward, but if you're not having them, you can't get paid. I mean, it's kind of fundamental. If you're not actually, I've had people jump in my Clubhouse rooms, literally get out of the room and make 10K from speaking within the next week. For no other reason, bar the gigs that were coming to them anyway, they started to quote a dang price for a change. Rather than just being like, okay, let me put that in my diary. They'd say, okay, cool, that's going to be 2K. And you know what? The people had the money. But I don't know anybody who doesn't like a deal. If I can get to the end of something and somebody shows up and they're going to deliver stuff and they ain't going to charge me for it, I'll be like, okay, then.
Yeah, exactly. They'll take advantage of it.
Yeah, a lot of people get themselves into trouble. It's like, so the work I'm doing is really about your visibility, your positioning, and moving from a space where you're having to push to get those fees, but having a business structure that supports you and looking at the multiple different avenues in which you can get revenue money into your business from speaking. And so whilst I work with people who want to be professional speakers and they want a speaker fee, to me, when I'm working with my clients, every single engagement is an opportunity to make money, every single one, without failure. And it's about implementing that strategy. That means that this asset that you have, your ability to speak effectively and move and create transformation through your voice, you're now being paid for it consistently rather than just giving your talent away for free.
That's pretty sweet. And do you enjoy the coaching side of things as much as the moderation and the hosting of events? Do you enjoy both the aspects of your business as much?
I do. I think there were two things. So to me, I just think anytime you're doing something that you are naturally talented at, it's kind of fun. And the reason I do the coaching side of things is because as a host, I noticed that I was just introducing far too many men, and I've got nothing against men. I think they're wonderful. I just would like to see men, women, like just more diversity on the stages, right? Like rather than being at events where it's so male driven. And what frustrated me is like, well, where the frick are all of the women? Because I know so many of them. Like, where are they? And the one thing that struck me when I did some research is when organizers were telling me that it was harder to find female talent than it was to find male talent. And that to me, because I grew my business with, I don't like the word hustle, but having taken responsibility for my own visibility. I have people who represent me now. They all came to me to represent me. I never went out kind of looking for a booker or anything like that. They saw me, they engaged with me, they liked me, I'm on their books. That's pretty much how that worked. And all of my engagements initially, I found them. Like, these are my clients. They're not a booker's clients, they're my clients. And over the years, as I built my profile, what I found is that people have just come to me. Now, I don't even know where they come from. And they now come with money. I'm like, darn. They didn't used to have that before. They used to come, but they didn't have money. And what I would find is those who come without much of a budget, they come with this attitude of, I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford you. And that's what I want to teach other female entrepreneurs, because the market is desperately looking for women and looking for diversity in general, be it female, diversity of gender, diversity of ability. They're really looking for that diversity. The challenge is, if you're not even in the mix, you're not being found, then it's impossible for them to book you for these opportunities. And for those people who do the work early, what happens is after a while, it works for itself. Where you struggle is when you don't have the internet doing a ton of legwork for you 24/7 that you didn't have to bust your ass for. So yeah, I love both sides of it. Like, yeah, it's my idea of fun, the idea of being on stages and then watching other women blossom so I can be on a stage introducing one of them. Like, that's just, I'm like, yes, I live for it.
Beautiful. So they really coordinate themselves together.
Yeah.
They're both deeply linked. I can't believe it's already the end of our interview, Lovelda. I could listen to you speak all day. I love the topic. I love your energy. You've got a radiant smile too. And I can tell that you really love what you do, which is always so beautiful every time I meet someone that loves their job as much as I do, at least. Anyway, thank you so much for being on the show. Where can people find you if they want to find out more, if they want to be in touch, if they want you as a host? Where can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted me to come host, I do podcasts, live, virtual, in person, hybrid, the whole lot. If you head over to lovelda.com, really simple, you'll find my show reel and all of that information in there. You can also find me on LinkedIn for hosting. If you would like my insights on how to get visibility to get on stages, link up with me on Instagram is probably the best platform for that. Or I can also share a free resource with you. I have a blueprint I call the Speaker Marketing Blueprint, which is basically the stuff I did before, during, and after engagements that allowed me to build a profile where people come to me expecting to pay. And I just get some really incredible clients from all over the place. And it's just a totally free gift. If anybody would like a copy of that, if you go to worldclassfemalespeakers.com/speaker marketing blueprint, it's on there. I can share the link with you as well, so you can drop it in the show notes.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for being here today, Lovelda. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.